Look at this relief. It depicts Assyrian soldiers scaling walls and dismantling an enemy city. Because of images like this, history has categorized the Assyrians as a military machine focused entirely on the physical mechanics of conquest. But King Ashurbanipal held a different kind of power. He possessed the foundational code for dominating human memory, a tool far more durable than the iron used by his infantry. In 648 BC, he initiated a massive data-gathering project. He collected thousands of cuneiform tablets from across the Near East, centralizing everything from complex Sumerian math to the religious narratives that formed the basis of regional identity. Ashurbanipal treated this collection as a private treasure to be guarded. He viewed knowledge as a static archive of the past, failing to recognize that information is only effective when deployed to shape the future. While the king spent his final years reading in seclusion, his enemies formed a coalition. In 612 BC, Nineveh was besieged and burned, and his library was buried under the ruins of his palace. The administrative blueprints for managing a continent-spanning logistics network vanished. The specific mathematical and astronomical records compiled over 2 millennia were erased from active use, leaving subsequent civilizations to spend centuries reinventing basic accounting and celestial forecasting. If Ashurbanipal had moved beyond the role of a librarian and treated his knowledge as a weapon of disruption, the trajectory of human development would have been permanently altered. Reset to the year 648 BC in Babylon. Historically, this was historic moment Ashurbanipal crushed his brother's rebellion. In our alternate timeline, this victory marks a strategic divergence. Ashurbanipal realizes his library's true value, standardizing his subjects. He distributes his data, forcing the empire to adopt identical protocols. Using this system of information feudalism, he leverages intelligence to orchestrate disinformation campaigns, causing enemies to fight each other instead of the Assyrian state. He deploys information commissars to enforce a global standard for the Akkadian language. By dictating the vocabulary used to describe the world, the state begins to govern the very thoughts of its citizens. Ashurbanipal stops being a passive collector and becomes a reality architect. He transforms a vulnerable military state into an inescapable ideological system that no longer depends on the king's physical presence to survive. This clay fragment contains the dense data of Sumerian mathematics. In the Neo-Assyrian timeline, this isn't just a record of the past, it is the manual for a new industrial age. By applying base 60 geometry to furnace airflow and structural stress, his engineers move from artisan smithing to standardized metallurgy. This mobilization of data allows for the production of torsion-powered siege engines and steel-clad infantry units that would not appear in our timeline for another 2,000 years. He also applies this logic to cultural control. He recognizes that destroying a rival's temple is inefficient. It creates martyrs and fuels long-term resistance. Instead, he archives the conquered cultures. As seen in this seal impression, local deities are depicted yielding to a dominant central figure. Ashurbanipal demotes rival gods to minor sub-administrators, making them part of the Assyrian bureaucracy. This is the world's first functioning soft imperialism. The empire's hard military might is secured by rewriting the underlying cultural software of every nation it touches. Smash cut to the present day in this alternate timeline. The Middle East has become the undisputed center of global power, anchored by a mega-city larger than Tokyo. Its skyscrapers are built as glass and steel ziggurats. In this world, oil is not a mere commodity. It is a sacred resource controlled by a millennial dynasty that manages the planet's energy with the same bureaucratic precision used by Ashurbanipal's ancient scribes. Because the chain of mathematical and astronomical data was never broken by the burning of the library, the scientific trajectory reached a critical mass much earlier. By the 17th century, celestial mechanics had been applied to physical exploration, and humanity reached Mars. Cultural history has been completely inverted. English does not exist. The global population speaks a modernized dialect of Akkadian, and the Epic of Gilgamesh is the universal planetary anthem. Democracy is not an ideal in this world. It is considered a dangerous, backward heresy, found only in isolated Western colonies like America. Snap back to our reality. The legacy of the Assyrian Empire still looms, but its true significance isn't in its physical ruins. It lies in a mechanic that defines the modern world. Ashurbanipal's alternate success reveals a dynamic that modern digital monopolies use every day. The most effective way to control a population is not to conquer their land, but to become the directory through which they access information. Keeping knowledge in a closed archive allows it to die with the archivist, but distributing it under your own specific rules forces the entire world to adopt your perspective just to function. Ashurbanipal's empire failed because he treated his knowledge as a closed loop, a record of what had been. A lasting power requires a system that is constantly